The plasma burst scorched the wall inches from Princess Asteria's head as she raced through the crystalline corridors of the royal palace on Centauri Prime. Her silver ceremonial gown, meant for her wedding day, now torn and smoldering at the edges, sparkled under the ethereal light of the twin moons streaming through the towering windows. Another shot, another near miss. The guards were getting closer. "Your Highness, please." Captain Render's voice echoed behind her. "Think of the consequences." But Asteria had thought of nothing else for the past 3 cycles. The consequences of allowing Warlord Draxus to gain control of the Centaurian Empire through their marriage. The consequences of watching her people slowly lose their freedom under his iron grip. The consequences of doing nothing. She reached the private hangar where her personal shuttle waited, its sleek chrome surface reflecting the emergency lights now flashing throughout the palace. Her fingers flew across the biometric lock, the door sliding open with a soft hiss. The sound of boots on polished crystal grew louder. "Initiate launch sequence," she commanded, diving into the pilot's seat. The ship's AI hummed to life, displays lighting up across the curved dashboard. A warning flashed, "Unauthorized departure detected." Of course they'd locked down the hangar. But Asteria hadn't spent the last year secretly studying the palace's security systems for nothing. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, bypassing safety protocols and overriding the lockdown. The engines roared to life just as the first guards burst into the hangar, their weapons raised. "Final warning, Your Highness." Captain Rendar stepped forward, his usually pristine uniform now disheveled from the chase. "Warlord Draxus will see this as an act of war." "He already is at war with everything we stand for," Asteria replied, sealing the ship's entry hatch. "Tell my father I'm sorry, but I cannot be the chains that bind our people." The shuttle lifted off, its gravitational field scattering equipment across the hangar. Through the view screen, Asteria watched the guards scramble for cover as she pointed the nose toward the hangar's force field. One carefully calculated burst from the emergency thrusters, and she was through, soaring into the night sky of her homeworld for what might be the last time. But freedom was still far from certain. As her shuttle broke through the atmosphere, the massive form of Draxus's flagship emerged from behind Centauri Prime's largest moon. The vessel was a nightmare of sharp angles and weapon arrays, a perfect reflection of its master's nature. "Unidentified vessel, you are in violation of pre-wedding security protocols," a cold voice crackled through her comm system. "Return to the surface immediately." Asteria killed the comm and pushed her engines to full power. The shuttle was small and fast, designed for quick planetary escapes. If she could just reach the edge of the system's gravity well, she could make the jump to hyperspace. Her navigation computer was preset with randomized coordinates, somewhere far beyond Draxus's reach. The first shots from the flagship's lateral batteries filled space around her with deadly green energy. Asteria rolled and dove, her royal flight training serving her well as she evaded the barrage. But her small craft couldn't take even a single direct hit from those weapons. Warning alerts screamed as 2 patrol ships launched from the flagship's belly, their engines burning hot as they gave chase. They were faster than her shuttle, designed specifically for pursuit and intercept. Asteria's fingers tightened on the controls as she watched them gaining ground on her sensor display. That's when she saw it, a solar flare erupting from Centauri Prime star, its radiation already playing havoc with her instruments. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it was her only chance. Asteria turned her ship directly toward the flare, counting on her shuttle's superior shielding to protect her. The patrol ships hesitated for a crucial moment, their pilots likely questioning the wisdom of following her into the radiation storm. That moment was all she needed. As soon as her shuttle crossed into the flare's periphery, Asteria executed a slingshot maneuver around the solar emission, using its energy to boost her speed beyond her engine's normal capacity. By the time she emerged on the other side, she had gained enough distance to make the jump. Her shuttle's computer warned her that the coordinates were outside known space, but Asteria didn't care. She pulled the hyperdrive lever, and reality stretched around her like rubber before snapping into the familiar tunnel of faster-than-light travel. She had done it. She was free. But as her adrenaline faded, new fears crept in. Where would she end up? What kind of world awaited her? And how long before Draxus's vast network of spies and bounty hunters picked up her trail? The answer to her first question came sooner than expected. A violent shudder ran through the shuttle, alarms blaring as it was yanked out of hyperspace. Something was wrong with the drive, damage from the solar flare, perhaps, or simply the strain of her desperate escape. The shuttle tumbled out of the hyperspace tunnel into normal space, its systems failing one by one. Through the view screen, Asteria saw a blue-green planet spinning below, surrounded by primitive satellites and space debris. Her shuttle's remaining sensors picked up thousands of electronic signals emanating from the surface, along with evidence of a developing civilization. Not completely primitive, then, but certainly not part of any major galactic power. As her ship began to burn through the atmosphere, its failing systems unable to maintain a controlled descent, Asteria sent out a silent prayer to her ancestors. She had chosen freedom over duty, love over power. Now she could only hope that choice wouldn't end with her death on this unknown world. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was a vast mountain range rising up to meet her, its peaks crowned with snow under the light of a single moon. James Harrison was halfway up Thunder Mountain when he saw the streak of light tear across the pre-dawn sky. In 15 years of search and rescue work, he'd seen plenty of meteors, but this was different. Its trajectory was too controlled, its descent too gradual. Then came the impact, sending a shockwave through the valley that scattered a flock of startled birds from the trees below. He keyed his radio. "Base, this is Harrison. We've got an impact event about 2 clicks north of my position. I'm going to check it out." "Copy that, Harrison," came the crackled reply. "National Weather Service has nothing scheduled for re-entry. Want us to alert Air Force?" James thought about the strange flight pattern, the controlled descent. "Negative. Let me take a look first. Might be nothing." But as he changed course toward the impact site, his military training kicked in. 8 years as an Air Force pilot had taught him what natural phenomena looked like. This wasn't one of them. The crash site was surprisingly compact, no widespread debris field, just a single trench carved into the mountainside leading to a sleek vessel unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its chrome surface was scorched but largely intact, suggesting advanced materials far beyond current technology. Steam rose from its hull in the cool mountain air. "Hello?" James approached cautiously, one hand on the rescue kit at his belt. "Anyone in there?" A section of the hull suddenly shifted with a hydraulic hiss, making him jump back. As the steam cleared, he saw a figure stumble out, humanoid, female, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an opalescent quality. Her hair was a striking violet color that appeared to move on its own, like tendrils in an invisible current. She wore what looked like formal attire, though it was torn and singed. Their eyes met. Hers were completely silver, with no visible pupils, yet somehow conveyed a very human expression of fear and desperation. She took one step toward him and collapsed. James caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he could feel a pulse, or something like it, racing beneath the surface. "Base, this is Harrison. We've got a situation here. I need..." The woman's hand gripped his arm with surprising strength. "Please," she said in perfect English, though her voice had an otherworldly resonance. "No authorities. They'll find me." "Who'll find you?" "The ones I'm running from." She tried to stand but stumbled again. "If they track me here, your world will be in danger." James looked at the ship, then back at her. He thought about his time in the Air Force, about the things he'd seen that never made it into official reports. Making a decision, he keyed his radio again. Base, false alarm. Just some space debris. Metal fragment, about the size of a basketball. Nothing worth reporting. Copy that, Harrison. Return to patrol? Negative. Weather's turning bad up here. I'm heading back to the cabin. He helped the woman to her feet. I've got a place about a mile from here. We can talk there. But first, we need to hide your ship. Over the next hour, they worked together to camouflage the vessel with branches and foliage. The woman, who introduced herself as Asteria, seemed to grow stronger as they worked, though she moved with the uncertain gestures of someone adjusting to different gravity. Inside James's cabin, she sat by the fire while he made coffee, her silver eyes taking in every detail of the rustic interior. Your dwelling is primitive, she said, then quickly added, I apologize. That was rude. James smiled, handing her a mug. Primitive compared to what you're used to, I'm sure. But it's private, and that seems to be what you need right now. Asteria stared at the coffee, mimicking how James held his mug before taking a careful sip. Her eyes widened. This sensation, it's pleasant. Wait until you try pizza. He sat across from her. Now, want to tell me what brings a refugee to my mountain? She told him everything, about her royal heritage, the arranged marriage, her desperate escape. As she spoke, James noticed how she gradually adopted his mannerisms, her formal speech patterns softening to match his casual tone. It was like watching someone learn a new language in real time. So this Draxus, James said when she finished, he'll come looking for you? Eventually. But the solar flare should have damaged my quantum wake signature. It will take time for them to track me here. She met his eyes. I understand if you want me to leave. I've already put you at risk by. A distant rumbling cut her off. They both rushed to the window. High in the atmosphere, a massive shape briefly blocked out the stars before vanishing, a ship engaging its cloaking technology. Scouts, Asteria whispered. They're already here. James checked his old military radio frequencies. Sure enough, chatter was picking up about unidentified objects in orbit. Soon, others would make the connection he had. You can't stay here, he said, already packing a bag. Too exposed. I've got some contacts from my Air Force days, people who deal with situations like this. They can help. Why? Asteria asked. Why would you risk yourself for me? James thought about the lonely years since leaving the service, about the feeling that he was meant for something more than mountain rescues. Let's just say I've been waiting for another adventure. He handed her some of his spare clothes, jeans, flannel shirt, hiking boots. First thing though, we need to help you blend in. Silver eyes and violet hair tend to attract attention around here. Asteria nodded, pulling something from a hidden pocket in her torn dress. It looked like a delicate silver bracelet. She slipped it on, and her alien features shimmered and changed, becoming human in appearance. Now she looked like any other hiker who might visit the mountains, except for the regal way she carried herself. Molecular camouflage, she explained. Standard equipment for diplomatic missions to pre-contact worlds. Handy, James said, shouldering his pack. Ready to learn how to be human? Asteria took one last look at the mountains through the window, at the vast wilderness that had both welcomed and hidden her. I believe I already am, in some ways. Your world, there's something about it that feels like home. Yeah, James said, leading her out into the night. Earth tends to have that effect on people. Above them, more shadows moved across the stars. The hunt had begun, but for now, they had a head start and the cover of darkness. It wasn't much, but James had learned long ago that sometimes the greatest adventures start with nothing more than a chance encounter and a choice to help someone in need. The roadside diner looked like any other along the interstate, neon signs buzzing in the twilight, trucks idling in the parking lot, the smell of coffee and grilled food wafting through the desert air. But to Asteria, each detail was fascinating. So humans gather in these places to share sustenance, she whispered to James as they slid into a worn vinyl booth. Her camouflage device maintained her human appearance, but she still struggled with certain mannerisms. Among other things, James replied, trying not to smile as she poked at the sticky menu with scientific curiosity. It's also good for laying low. Nobody looks too closely at tired travelers. It had been 3 days since their escape from the mountains. 3 days of back roads and cash transactions, staying ahead of the alien scouts they occasionally glimpsed in the sky. James had taught her the basics, how to walk like a human, how to handle money, why you couldn't tell the waitress you found the concept of liquid-absorbing paper squares, charmingly primitive. Your usual, James. The waitress appeared, coffee pot in hand. Nancy, her name tag read, though she'd worked here so long it was barely legible. Thanks, Nancy. And a cheeseburger with fries. He looked at Asteria. Same for you? Asteria nodded, remembering their practice sessions. Yes, please. And, coffee would be lovely. As Nancy walked away, James leaned forward. You're getting better at this. Almost couldn't hear the royal accent that time. I'm a quick study. Though I still don't understand why humans insist on, she froze, her silver eyes flickering beneath their camouflaged brown. James. He knew that tone. Carefully, he turned to look out the window. A black SUV had pulled into the parking lot, followed by another. Men in dark suits stepped out, their movements too precise to be federal agents. Hunters, Asteria breathed. Draxus's elite trackers. They must have picked up my energy signature. James caught Nancy's eye and made a subtle gesture, an old signal from his military days that some truck stop workers still remembered. She nodded slightly and disappeared into the kitchen. Back door? Asteria asked, having learned to read his expressions. Back door. But we have to assume they're watching it. He pulled out his wallet, leaving enough cash to cover their uneaten meal. Remember what I taught you about human vehicles? A slight smile crossed her face. The internal combustion engine. Primitive but effective. They slipped out of the booth just as the front door chimed. 2 of the suited men entered, their eyes scanning the diner. James and Asteria walked unhurriedly toward the restroom hallway, then ducked through the kitchen door Nancy had left ajar. The kitchen staff barely looked up as they passed through, used to all sorts of characters in this remote stretch of highway. Through the back door, into the desert night, where more black SUVs were indeed pulling around the building. But James hadn't spent years in mountain rescue without learning a few tricks. He led Asteria to a battered pickup truck, its rust-covered body making it practically invisible among the other vehicles. Hot wiring? Asteria asked as he worked under the dash. Like in your action movies? Better. He pulled out a key. Nancy's husband's truck. Part of an old network from my Air Force days. People who help other people disappear. The truck roared to life just as shouts erupted from behind the diner. James threw it into gear, tires spraying gravel as they pulled out. In the rearview mirror, dark shapes ran toward their vehicles. They'll track the thermal signature, Asteria said, gripping the dashboard as James took a sharp turn onto a dirt road. That's what the desert's for. He reached behind the seat, pulling out a tarp-covered bundle. Your ship wasn't the only thing we salvaged from the mountain. Asteria's eyes widened as she recognized the device, a portable scanner from her shuttle's emergency kit. You kept this? Figured it might come in handy. Can you use it to create false heat signatures? She was already working with the device, her fingers dancing over its controls. Better. I can mask ours completely. But it will only last about 20 minutes before the power cell dies. 20 minutes is all we need. They drove into the darkness, the truck's headlights off, James navigating by starlight and memory. Behind them, the SUV's powerful beams swept the desert, searching. But they were searching for heat, for energy signatures, for the usual signs of fleeing prey. They weren't expecting their quarry to vanish into the absolute cold of a masked thermal signature. When the scanner finally died, they were deep in the maze of desert canyons. James pulled the truck into a hidden cave, another safe spot from his mysterious network. "You've done this before," Asteria said as they made camp in the cave's interior. "Helped people escape." James nodded, setting up battery-powered lanterns. "After the Air Force, I saw things, learned things. Found others who knew the truth about visitors like you. Some friendly, some not. We built a network to help where we could. And now you're helping an alien princess escape an arranged marriage." She laughed softly. "Not quite the same as your usual missions, I imagine. Actually, it's exactly what we do. Help people choose their own path." He looked at her seriously. "But Asteria, these hunters, they're not going to stop. And they're getting better at tracking you." She was quiet for a moment, watching the lantern light dance on the cave walls. "There might be a way to contact my people, the ones who oppose Draxus. But we'd need access to specialized communication equipment. Let me guess, equipment that's probably under heavy surveillance." "The heaviest. There's a research facility in Nevada. They've been studying a piece of Centaurian technology for decades, though they don't know its true origin. With it, I could reach the resistance." James thought about the risks, about the network of helpers that had kept them safe so far. But he also thought about the look in Asteria's eyes when she spoke of freedom, not just for herself, but for her people. "Nevada, huh?" He pulled out an old map, spreading it on the cave floor. "Well, Princess, I hope you're ready for another human tradition." "What's that?" "The Great American Road Trip." He traced a route with his finger. "But first, we need to make a few calls. If we're going up against your hunter friends, we're going to need some friends of our own." Asteria touched the map, her camouflaged human fingers following the line he'd drawn. "You know this could be considered an act of war, helping me interfere with Centaurian affairs. From what you've told me about Draxus, war is coming whether we help or not. At least this way, we're choosing our side." He met her eyes in the lantern light. "Unless you're having second thoughts?" She reached up, touching her camouflage bracelet, letting her true form show for a moment, the silver eyes, the violet hair, the subtle glow of her skin. But her expression was pure human determination. "No second thoughts. But James, thank you. For seeing me as more than just a princess or an alien. For showing me what freedom really means." He was about to respond when a distant rumble echoed through the canyon, vehicles on the move. The hunters hadn't given up. "Thank me when we've gotten that message to your people," he said, already packing up. "For now, let's focus on staying ahead of the trouble." "Trouble?" She smiled, activating her camouflage again. "I thought that was another human tradition. Now you're getting it." They doused the lanterns, preparing to move again. Above the cave, through a crack in the rock, the stars glittered like distant promises. Somewhere up there, a revolution was waiting to begin. But first, they had to survive the night. The Nevada Research Facility rose from the desert like a metallic oasis, its security fences and surveillance towers creating a stark perimeter against the barren landscape. James and Asteria watched from their vantage point in the hills, using high-powered binoculars to study the patrol patterns. "Your people really do love their secrets," Asteria murmured, noting the unmarked vehicles and plainclothes guards. After 2 weeks on the run, she'd mastered the art of human observation, learning to see her own galaxy through Earth's eyes. "Says the alien princess in disguise," James replied with a slight smile. But his expression quickly turned serious. "You're sure the communication device is in there?" I can feel it. She pressed a hand to her chest, where a faint glow pulsed beneath her camouflaged human appearance. All Centaurian royalty are connected to our ancient technologies. That's how I knew it was here, its energy calls to me. Their small camp was well hidden in the rocks, but they weren't alone. Over the past week, James had called in favors from his old network. 3 former Air Force pilots, a communications expert, and a security specialist, all people who'd encountered evidence of extraterrestrial life and chosen to help rather than look away. Teams in position, said Rachel, the security specialist, crawling up beside them. Her dark eyes scanned the facility with professional assessment. But we've got movement on the south side. More SUVs coming in. James focused his binoculars where she indicated. Hunters? Has to be, Asteria said. They must have detected the energy signature too. We're running out of time. The plan was risky, but it was all they had. While James's team created a distraction on the north end of the facility, he and Asteria would slip in through a maintenance tunnel their intelligence suggested was lightly guarded. The communication device, a crystalline sphere according to Asteria, was being kept in a sub-basement lab. 15 minutes until sunset, Rachel said, checking her watch. We should. She was cut off by a deep thrumming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The air itself appeared to ripple, and then the sky above the facility simply opened. A massive ship, at least half a mile long, decloaked directly overhead. Draxus, Asteria breathed, her camouflage flickering with her shock. That's his personal warship. He's here himself. James watched as smaller craft began descending from the larger vessel. Change of plans. Rachel, tell the team to hold position. This just got complicated. More than you know, Asteria said, her voice tight with sudden realization. Look at the facility. The guards aren't running. They're greeting them. She was right. Instead of panic at the arrival of an alien warship, the facility's security forces were forming up in welcome formation. As they watched, a shuttle landed, and a tall figure emerged, humanoid but massive, his armor gleaming with the same dark energy that powered his ship. They knew, James said, the pieces falling into place. The government, or at least this part of it, they've been working with him. Of course. Asteria's fists clenched. The technology they're studying. Draxus must have given it to them. A down payment for their cooperation when he finally moved against my people. She turned to James, her camouflage fully dropping to reveal the fury in her silver eyes. Your leaders sold out my rebellion before it could even begin. Not my leaders, James replied firmly. And not all of humanity. Rachel? The security specialist was already on her radio, speaking in quick, coded bursts. Within minutes, confirmation came back, their small team was still with them, still ready to fight. It's suicide, Asteria protested. That's a warship up there, with enough firepower to level this continent. I can't ask you to. James took her hand, surprising them both with the gesture. You're not asking. We're choosing. Besides, he smiled, humans have a pretty good track record of beating impossible odds. They modified the plan on the fly. While Rachel's team created an even bigger distraction than originally intended, including some explosives she'd borrowed from her last military contract, James and Asteria would use the confusion of Draxus's arrival to their advantage. The hunters will be focused on the ship, James explained as they geared up. And facility security will be busy with the welcome ceremony. It's actually better timing than we had before. There's something else, Asteria said quietly as they prepared to move out. The communication device, it's not just for contacting the resistance. It's a key, passed down through my family line. When activated by royal blood, it can disable any Centaurian technology within its range. James paused in checking his equipment. Including a warship? Including everything. But James, if we do this, if we expose Draxus's deals with Earth governments and disable his forces, the consequences will be handled, he finished. One problem at a time, Princess. Right now, let's go save your people. They moved through the gathering darkness, using the shadows of Draxus's own ship as cover. Above them, the massive vessel hung like a second sky, its energy fields making the air buzz with potential. Guards patrolled the facility's perimeter, but their attention was divided between their usual posts and the historical moment unfolding at the main entrance. The maintenance tunnel was exactly where their intelligence had indicated. Rachel's explosive distraction hadn't started yet, but they'd already encountered their first stroke of luck. The tunnel's security panel was tied into the facility's main system, which was currently focused on accommodating the alien ship's powerful energy field. Sometimes, James muttered as he bypassed the lock with surprising ease, the most complicated security can be undone by simple overload. They descended into the tunnel's darkness, guided by the pulsing glow of Asteria's connection to the ancient technology below. Every step brought them closer to either salvation or disaster, and there would be no way to know which until they reached their goal. Behind them, they heard the first explosions, Rachel's team beginning their performance. But it was what they heard ahead that made them pause, voices, speaking in a language James didn't recognize but Asteria clearly did. Her face went pale beneath its natural glow. "That's the royal dialect," she whispered. "They're already here, Draxus's personal guard. They're trying to activate the device themselves." James checked his weapon, non-lethal but effective against most organic beings. "Can they do it? Activate it without royal blood?" "No, but they can destroy it if they realize what it truly is." She met his eyes in the dim light. "James, if anything happens." He cut her off with a gesture they developed over their weeks together. "No goodbyes." Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a simple silver ring. "Found it in a small town we passed through," he explained quickly. "Reminded me of your camouflage bracelet. Thought maybe, when this is over." Understanding dawned in her silver eyes, followed by something deeper. Without warning, she pulled him close and kissed him, their first kiss, there in the darkness beneath a desert facility with alien voices echoing ahead and human explosions booming above. When they separated, her eyes were glowing brighter than he'd ever seen. "Now we have another reason to survive this," she said. "Ready?" James nodded, still a bit dazed but focused on their mission. "Ready. Let's go make some history." They moved forward together, toward whatever fate awaited them in the depths of the facility. Above them, Draxus's warship loomed, its master unaware that his greatest defeat was about to be orchestrated by a runaway princess and a human who'd chosen love over loyalty to his own government secrets. The real revolution, they both knew, had already succeeded, not in the stars above, but in the simple truth that freedom, love, and courage could transcend any boundary, even those between worlds. Time seemed to slow as James and Asteria burst into the facility's sub-basement laboratory. The room was circular, its walls lined with Earth's primitive attempts to interface with Centaurian technology. In the center, floating in a containment field, was their objective, a crystalline sphere about the size of a basketball, pulsing with internal light. Draxus's guards spun to face them, their ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh laboratory lights. Behind them stood Draxus himself, even more imposing in person than in Asteria's descriptions. His face was aristocratically cruel, cybernetic implants threading through his skin like silver veins. "My wayward bride," he said, his voice resonating with artificial harmonics. "I must admit, you've led us on quite a chase." "I am not, and will never be, your bride," Asteria replied, her camouflage fully dropped now, royal authority ringing in her tone. "This ends here." Draxus smiled, the expression never reaching his augmented eyes. "Ah, but it's already ended. Your father has signed the marriage treaty. Earth's leaders have agreed to stay neutral. And you? He glanced at James with disdain, have committed treason by consorting with these primitives. James kept his weapon ready but held his fire. Around them, alarms blared as Rachel's team's distractions reached their peak. They just needed to buy a little more time. Primitives? James said, drawing Draxus's attention. Funny. We're not the ones who need cybernetics to enhance our natural abilities. The warlord's face darkened. Insolent, he raised his arm, weapon ports opening in his armor. That's when Asteria made her move. While everyone's attention was on James, she had been slowly shifting position, drawing closer to the containment field. Now she lunged, her hand passing through the Earth-made barriers as if they weren't there. No! Draxus roared, realizing too late what she intended. The moment Asteria's fingers touched the sphere, it blazed with brilliant light. The ancient technology recognized her royal blood, activating protocols laid down generations ago. Energy coursed through the room, making every piece of Centaurian technology vibrate in response. Draxus's guards collapsed as their armor short-circuited. The warlord himself staggered, his cybernetic enhancements failing one by one. Above them, they could hear the massive warship's engines dying, its anti-gravity systems shutting down. What have you done? Draxus demanded, his voice now purely organic, stripped of its artificial power. Freed my people, Asteria answered, the sphere's light surrounding her like an aura. Your technology is disabled. Your forces are grounded. And that treaty you mentioned? She smiled. Hard to enforce it when the evidence of your secret dealings with Earth is about to be broadcast to every Centaurian colony world. James's radio crackled. Rachel's voice came through, tight with urgency, whatever you did down there worked. The ship's dropping, but its emergency systems are keeping it from crashing. Military channels are going crazy. You need to get out now. But Draxus wasn't finished. With a roar of rage, he charged at Asteria, drawing a very primitive but effective blade from his boot. James intercepted him, years of combat training taking over. They grappled, the warlord's superior strength nearly overwhelming him even without his enhancements. James! Asteria cried out, unable to help while maintaining contact with the sphere. Finish it, he shouted back, blocking another strike. Complete the transmission. The sphere pulsed brighter as Asteria channeled her energy into it, broadcasting the truth across the stars. Every secret deal, every threatened world, every suppressed rebellion, all of it exposed to the light of justice. Draxus managed to throw James aside, but the delay had cost him. By the time he reached Asteria, it was too late. The transmission was complete. Through the facility's high windows, they could see ships appearing in the sky, not Earth vessels, but the hidden fleet of the Centaurian resistance, drawn to the sphere's signal. It's over, Asteria said as James rejoined her, his hand finding hers. Your power is broken. The warlord looked from them to the ships above, his face contorting with the realization of total defeat. With a final snarl of rage, he reached for his blade again, only to be dropped by a perfect shot from Rachel, who had just burst into the lab with her team. Seriously, she said, holstering her weapon, did you think we'd let you have all the fun down here? The next hours passed in a blur of activity. The Resistance fleet secured the facility while Earth's military scrambled to respond to the sudden exposure of their secret programs. Draxus and his conspirators, both alien and human, were taken into custody by a joint task force. Through it all, James and Asteria never let go of each other's hands. Later, as dawn broke over the desert, they stood watching Resistance ships begin the process of towing Draxus's massive warship into orbit. The sphere, its work done, had gone dormant again. So, James said, what happens now? To your people? To us? Asteria turned to face him, her silver eyes reflecting the rising sun. My people will need time to rebuild, to establish new relationships with other worlds, including Earth, but properly this time, without secrets and threats. And us? He repeated softly. She reached up, touching his face gently. When I fled my world, I thought I was running away from duty. But maybe I was running toward a greater one. My father once told me that a true ruler must understand all their people, see life through their eyes. She smiled. What better way than to join our worlds together? Are you proposing? James asked, raising an eyebrow. I believe, she said, pulling the silver ring he'd given her from a pocket, you already did. As they kissed, the first rays of Earth's sun caught the ring, making it shine like a star brought down to Earth. Above them, the Resistance fleet began jumping away to hyperspace, leaving Earth's sky clear and blue, but no longer empty of possibility. You know, James said when they finally parted, this means a lot of work ahead. Helping Earth adjust to official first contact, building trust between our peoples. Good thing you like adventures, Asteria replied, slipping the ring onto her finger. It glowed briefly, adapting to her natural form while maintaining its simple Earth-made beauty, a perfect symbol of their union. Together, they watched the sun rise on a new day, for Earth and Centauri Prime alike. The universe had changed overnight, but some things remained constant: the power of choice, the strength of love, and the simple truth that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a single act of courage. And somewhere in the mountains, a small chrome shuttle lay hidden under branches and leaves, waiting for the day it would be needed again, not for escape this time, but for return journeys between two worlds now forever linked by the love of a princess who chose freedom and the human who helped her find it.